Well, hello and welcome to the 27th Degree with Chris and Nancy. Today we'll be discussing trusts with Carol Simmons, Vice President and Wealth Management Officer with Plimoth Investment Advisors. Before we begin our conversation, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Bay Coast Bank. Bay Coast Bank is just right for all of your financial needs. Visit baycoast.bank or call 508-678-7641 to learn more. And Duncan Hearing Healthcare you can trust with sites in Fall River, Dartmouth, Falmouth, and Centerville. For more information, visit their website, duncanhearing.com. As always, you can support the 27th Degree with Chris and Nancy by subscribing to us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, by following us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, please remember to leave a review, and of course, 5-star reviews are always greatly appreciated. So thank you so much for joining our show.
Thank you for having me.
Really greatly appreciate it. Maybe we can start by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your role is.
Okay. So I am a Vice President and Wealth Management Officer of Plimoth Investment Advisors, and we are part of Bay Coast Bank. I've been in the trust industry for decades, and I won't tell you how many decades, but
We won't ask.
it's been a lot. And I hold the industry designations of Certified Trust and Financial Fiduciary, advisors, they just changed that, and Certified Senior Advisor, and that's senior as in senior citizens, so helping elderly
Nancy.
navigate.
Yeah.
We all need a little help, Chris. We all need a little help.
And like I said, I've been in the industry for a very long time, and I still love it. Every day is
great.
different. Every situation is different. Every family is different.
Sure.
And so it's never boring, never dull, and just it's a great way to help people.
That's great.
Now, you mentioned, and I hear this term a lot, what is a fiduciary?
So a fiduciary is a individual or a company, such as Plymouth Trust Company, that is hired or charged with handling situations. And the term fiduciary is that we have to put the client first. The client's interests are number one. Our interests as trustee or any trustee's interest are secondary to that.
Nice.
Very good.
So then thank God you're an expert on trust, because I have a lot of questions for you.
Why don't we start with what is a trust?
I think that's an excellent.
For our listeners out there and our viewers, that would be a great place to start. Yeah.
So it's it can be pretty much anything that you want it to be.
Okay.
And I'll get into that in a little bit. But
Okay.
to sort of come up with a definition, if we sort of dissect it and say, what is trust? It's the heart of sort of everything that we do. It comes into play for our personal lives. It comes into play in our financial lives, medical lives, and anything that we do, it's putting our faith in someone to do what's best. It sort of unifies everyone or everything, a person or a thing, and it's sort of the heart and soul of who we are and what we do and what we want to have done.
So it's a legal document.
It starts as a legal document. Well, it starts as an idea first, okay? And once you have an idea of what you want to do, and to sort of paraphrase Walt Disney, at one point he said, it all started with an idea and a mouse. So
Right.
if you can think it, and it's legal, you can create a trust for it. And that's the greatest thing about it, because everyone is different. It's, and I will really date myself now, but Howard Johnson's peaked orange roof, restaurants, hotels, but most importantly, ice cream, 28 flavors, because not everyone likes chocolate, vanilla, or
I
strawberry.
might date myself if I say I know exactly what you're talking about.
I remember the orange roof. Sure.
Yeah, I saw you there.
Yeah.
So it's so you come up with the idea first
Okay.
of this is what I want to happen. This is what I would like for my family. This is what I would like for my friends. This is what I would like for my pets. We were talking about that before we started. So you get the idea first of what you want to do, and then you go to a lawyer, and you don't necessarily have to have a lawyer draft it for you, but it's also like if, as a doctor, could I set my own broken arm?
Right,
yeah,
right.
probably, but I'd probably
outcome
be
might not be
walking,
good, though, yeah.
walking around with it, behind my back.
Right.
So, yes, you could do it yourself, but not advised. So, you get the idea. You go to the attorney, and you tell him or her what you want to do and what your general idea is for the end result.
Okay.
And then the attorney will sit with you, go through questions, and come up with a strategy and a plan. And then the attorney will put it into legalese, and you go from there.
And if you don't have a clear vision of what you want to have done, will the attorney help you with that?
A lot of times they will. If you have a general concept, so I want to have my money go to charity. However, I need to make sure that I'm going to have enough money to live on and that I'll have what I want. So the attorney will take that idea and then branch off from there. Well, is it just you? Do you have a significant other? Does your family have longevity? How many years, do you think you might live?
Okay.
And it goes from there and starts going down a list so that everything is covered. And then generally the attorney will put together a draft so that you can see it and explain this is what's going to happen. If this happens, then that will occur.
Okay.
If that happens, then this will occur.
So I'm just thinking that maybe some of our viewers may wonder about this now that they're hearing about trusts, and they're probably thinking, well, I have a will. Isn't that the same thing?
So a will, sorry about the devil, you always need a will.
Okay.
And so everyone should have a will. And then depending on what you want, as we've been talking, you might decide that you need a trust to take it to the next step.
Okay. So will's kind of the basic foundation, and then
Yes.
you move on from
The
there.
will is generally used to collect all of your assets in one place. So
Okay.
if you have a trust, most of the time you're going to want to register everything in the name of the trust.
Okay.
But and then what happens with the will is it collects anything that isn't registered in the name of the trust. And in most cases, what's called a pour-over will is you collect the assets, or your personal representative after you're gone collects all the assets and then deposits them into the trust. And then from there, it carries forward with what you had wanted to begin with.
Okay.
Carol, I'm going to go back to what you initially opened up the conversation with. And I never thought of the word trust that way. Like, we throw around the word trust. Oh, I have my trust, blah, blah, blah. We've had it for a couple of years, but I never really thought about it in those terms, because it is important that you build your foundation on exactly how you define that word trust. And I think it gets thrown around so often that we don't really kind of take it back to its roots and be like,
It's, as I said, I have been in this industry for a very long time, and I have worked with multi-generational families. So I've dealt with the grandmother, the parents, the kids, and then the grandkids. And it's something that is, you're building a relationship as you go. And I have been invited to graduations. I've been invited to weddings. I've been invited to baptisms. I've been invited, well, not invited, but I've gone to funerals.
Yeah.
I've also been to divorce parties. so so you become part of the family because it's all about sharing information, because the lawyer can't help you. We as administrators of a trust can't help you unless you share information with us. And it's not just the polished version of a story. It's the true, I grew up with my brother Charlie, and Charlie was always mean to me, and now here I am, and I've won the lottery and I have $10 million, and Charlie was mean to me and I don't like him anymore, and I never did, and I don't want to give him any money. Whereas if someone didn't get into that detail,
Sorry, Charlie, if you're out there.
Right.
we might sort of say, well, are you really sure that you want to exclude him? So it's sharing information that you might not necessarily share with others. And again, it gets into that, I trust you with my secrets.
Right.
Is there a certain dollar amount? Like, do you have to be worth a certain amount to do a trust?
That's a tough question, and I hate to answer it with it depends. It depends on who you are naming as your trustee. Okay. So if you're naming a corporate trustee, there are generally minimums to make it economically feasible for a corporate trustee to manage an account, because usually the corporate trustee would get into managing investments as well as handling all of the personal needs, having a beneficiary come to a corporate trustee and saying, I need $60,000 because I want to buy a new truck because I just bought a farm, and I need a truck because my SUV just won't cut it. Okay. So a corporate trustee is going to have a set dollar amount.
Okay.
I was just dealing with some individuals from California, and the California corporate trustees have a $2 million minimum. Plymouth Investment Advisors, we are not anywhere near that. We like to say that our minimum is $500,000.
Okay.
But again, it's not one size fits all. We will take the time to sit down and talk with potential clients to see what their circumstances are, why they're creating the trust. We'll review the document, and then we'll see if it's something that we can manage favorably for Plymouth as well as for the client, because again, it's the partnership that we're most interested in.
Okay. Now there's a bunch of different trusts I hear through the rumor mill. Now I only thought before I was preparing this conversation with you that there was a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust, but I guess I was way wrong. So can you kind of walk us through?
So those are the basics. So a revocable trust means that you can change it as long as you are alive and as long as you are competent. Okay. So you could be alive, but in a memory care unit, therefore probably deemed not competent, and therefore you would not be able to change the trust. But up until that point, you can change a revocable trust however you want, as many times as you want.
Okay.
So an irrevocable trust is what you would think it is, that it cannot be changed. And when people hear about that, they say, well, why would I ever create a trust that I can't change? Circumstances may be different 10 years from now, and I may need that money. I may want that money. And it is irrevocable trusts are primarily done for tax reasons. If you set the money aside that you have no control over it, then it's not taxable to you because you have no control. And there are other situations, again, family situations that a parent may want to set money aside for a child, but they don't want anything to change it. So it could be done that a parent knows that they have an illness that they're not going to survive from, or their life expectancy is relatively short. So they may set that aside so that they know that it's what they want. It can also be an irrevocable trust, can be used for Medicare claims and nursing home payments and things like that. So there are specific reasons that you might want to set up an irrevocable trust.
I have two questions for you. So with and I guess I even said it wrong, irrevocable, it's irrevocable. So with that, can you just talk a little bit more about what can be protected with a revocable versus a irrevocable? Like if I'm afraid my husband's going to go into the nursing home and I was like, oh man, like I want to protect my assets a little bit. Like
Personal question.
maybe. Which trust is better? Are there waiting terms with trusts? And is irrevocable really that? Or if you have like say I put my house in an irrevocable trust and my 3 children are assigned, as long as they're in agreement, can it be changed? If they're like, yeah, we'll agree with that, go ahead, change the term.
So there's a lot there.
I know that was maybe more than 2 questions.
That was about 4 questions.
14.
Maybe 5. Yeah. That's
So the question or the idea that spouses and one may be needing more assistance, more care than the other. So the idea would be to separate your assets to begin with.
Okay.
So rather than keeping everything in joint name, you would want to take the assets and put them in your name alone, hoping that you are going to survive and that you are not going to end up being the one that needs services. And again, a lot of this is, I'm speaking in generalities because if you have lots and lots and lots of money, you have to take into consideration the tax implications of it. So just in general, you would probably want to separate your assets to begin with, and that way you're protecting the assets if one spouse, and it could even be if one spouse has creditors that the other doesn't.
Yeah.
You would want to separate them so that you are not liable for the other spouse's
Right.
credit issues.
That makes sense. So then, so is the irrevocable truly irrevocable, or can it be changed with agreement from all?
So depending on the way that it's written, and again, this is where speaking with the attorney and telling them what you want comes into play.
Right.
Because there are, or could be, let me clarify that, there could be circumstances that if you were to die and say...
She's talking about you now.
say you had a trust and you named a corporate trustee, say Plymouth Investment Advisors, and you were leaving it to your children. Okay? So you die, no spouse involved. You die, you leave it to 3 children. And you are not giving it to them outright. Okay? You want it to remain in trust whether they're younger, whether they have some issues with spending, managing money. So you want the trust to continue, but you want it to be for their benefit after you're gone. So you could say to the attorney, I really like the corporate trustee that I have chosen. However, my children live in Texas and California and Montana, and so they're not on the East Coast, and maybe they would feel more comfortable dealing with another corporate trustee that's on their side of the world. I may add a little caveat here. So Plymouth does have clients all over the country, but say that's your feeling. You know, the kids may want somebody closer to them. You could potentially write into the terms of the trust that the 3 children, if they are all in agreement, can nominate a new trustee, and the existing trustee has to resign. They don't have a choice. They have to resign. Or you could write in, and this is actually somewhat common, or common back in the day, that a trustee could be replaced only for cause. So if your existing trustee didn't invest prudently, didn't have the family's interest at heart, so it wasn't being managed in a fiduciary manner, that would be cause, and they could be replaced. But generally speaking, an irrev trust is going to remain irrev. But there are certain parts that could be changed. It can also be changed, and it could be written into the document that the trustee has the power to amend an irrevocable trust if the tax situations have changed. And it's not going to affect who the beneficiaries are, but it's going to affect the administration of the trust.
Okay.
So what's the process? We talked about a lawyer kind of drafting this out. So if I'm thinking about going to Plymouth Investment Advisors, do I have to have my lawyer like draft this trust out and then I sit with you?
So generally that's the way that we prefer it, so that we can, because as I mentioned at the beginning, if you can think it, it can be drafted. And so we want to be sure that we can act in a fiduciary manner for your best interests. So in order to do that, we need to know what's written into the document. It could potentially say that on the, third Tuesday of the every other month, the trustee needs to do XYZ in California. So, that's not something that we would agree to. So if that's something that's truly important to you, then we would probably say, we're sorry, we cannot accept the role of trustee.
There's so many nuances.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my word.
That's what makes it so interesting and so different.
That what makes you so valuable, I would imagine, because if you've been doing this for years, you kind of have it down.
So, Carol, I want to ask a very basic question, because I know this is a question some people out there are thinking about. Who should have a trust?
So
It's a good question.
anyone can have a trust if they have something specific that they want done, either during their lifetime, and say they become incapacitated and they're no longer going to be able to manage things on their own, or if they want something done after they've died. And that's sort of a key point that a lot of times people say, oh, well, I'm going to spend my money because I can't take it with me. Well, a trust is something that you can create that trust during your lifetime, and that can dictate what is going to happen in the future after you've passed away. So you maintain control. But to get back to your question of, who should have a trust, anyone that has a specific purpose in life, whether that be helping their family, leaving money to charity, we were kind of joking earlier, having a pet that they're not sure who's going to take care of the pet, and whether it be an incentive of, I'm leaving a trust of, $300,000 for my pet, and, you get to be paid for taking care of my pet if you agree to take on this duty. It's as long as someone is of legal age and is competent, they can create a trust.
Okay. Yeah, I'm starting to understand a little bit. We were talking about wills and trusts. If you have a will and you leave certain items to your beloved or your family or whatever,
Your business partner.
it's yeah. I mean, it's done. It's there. They have it. But with a trust, you can control after your death.
Correct.
How that money is being dispersed and used to some extent.
Yes.
Is that a basic difference?
Yes. So anyone can create a trust and say, I have a trust during my lifetime and I want it to continue after I pass on for my children.
Mm-hmm.
And you have one very financially responsible child. Mm-hmm. And you have another child that is a wonderful individual, but they don't always make the best financial decisions.
Okay.
So you could create either a family trust that encompasses both of them, or you could create a trust that says, my Johnny is financially responsible, he makes the best decisions, so when I die, take his share, whatever that may be, 50%, 75%, 90%, and pay it out to him directly. I'm sure that he's going to make the best decisions he can make. But, Sally, well, she's a great kid. She's been a great help to me all my life, but, she just doesn't quite make the right choices. Mm-hmm. So I want to leave her share of the money for her, and you as trustee have the discretion to make payments to her for any number of purposes. So you get to, and this is where controlling after your death comes in, that you get to decide, okay, Sally can have money for it used to be the term of care, comfort, and support, which is pretty broad, unless you qualify that a little bit. So you can say food and shelter. You can say she can take a trip once a year, and
you can be very specific then.
You can be very, very specific. I've had trusts that similar. Two brothers. One owned his own business, was very responsible. The other one, not so much. And so the dad said, okay, I'm going to make this sort of even, I'm going to keep a trust for each of them. So one doesn't feel that he gets the money and the other one doesn't. So the one that was very responsible had very broad terms. If he wants to add money to his business, if he wants to buy a house, if he wants to buy a car. And, the list sort of went on. And it actually said, view these terms in the broadest sense possible.
Nice.
The other brother, who was not so responsible, there was a clause in the trust that stated you can help him financially as long as he is working, which sort of goes against the, he might not need help if he's working. Well, he tested the limits of the trust, and the dad died, and he said, whoa, I'm a trust baby now. I don't have to work.
Not so much.
Quit his job, and the he was aware of the terms, quit his job, and the trust couldn't help him. The father wanted him to be responsible enough to keep a job. And it didn't matter what kind of job it was. He just had to be working and collecting a paycheck. And then the trust could help him with rent, food, vehicles.
I like that.
That's interesting.
That's sweet.
So again, it's if you can think it, you can do
it.
Primacare is southeastern New England's trusted leader in medical care. With offices in Fall River and surrounding communities, we're dedicated to your well-being. Our carefully selected team of more than 150 providers offers world-class primary and specialty medical care. Primacare doctors are supported by a skilled staff trained to deliver comprehensive radiology, imaging, and testing services. Primacare is large enough to take care of all your medical needs, but small enough to care for you personally. Primacare is by your side.
So you said something interesting too when you're talking about the trustees. I'm getting the feeling through our discussion that you shouldn't just willy-nilly go pick out a trustee. There's certain traits you might want that trustee to have if you're appointing a person. So can you talk a little bit about that and the responsibilities of a trustee?
So if you want, so you don't want to go the corporate trustee route, and that experience that comes with it, but there's also fees associated with that, let's be honest. And say you decide, well, I think that my sibling could be very responsible. Because one of the things that I think I forgot to mention, and it's extremely important, is that a trust document is a roadmap. It gives you where to go, how to get there, the turns to take, stop, don't go any further. So you have a sibling that you feel is very responsible, and that individual person can be named as a trustee, and they just have to have an understanding of the terms of the trust so that they can then follow along and manage it the way that you wanted it managed. So some of that comes into you're going to have assets within the trust. Those assets can be money, but they don't necessarily have to be money. So you can put in, you can add your house into a trust. You can, I've seen situations that a document was created at the time that a trust and a will were created that said, all of my personal assets are no longer my personal assets. They are assets of the trust. So this individual had a painting collection that she didn't own. It was owned by the trust. And so, again, if you can think of it, you can do it. But to get back to, naming an individual person, as long as you feel comfortable with that individual, you feel that they can understand what you are trying to accomplish. And of course, you'd want to sit with them before something happened to you to explain to them, this is what I would like to happen. And in that situation, you also may want to put a clause in there that says the beneficiaries can change the trustee if they're unhappy. You also should, again, remember that this is a roadmap. You should also plan what happens if that person does not survive me. What happens if that person becomes incapacitated? I need to have somebody else that would be able to step in and handle those responsibilities.
Okay.
Carol, when someone has their grandchildren who might be like 7 and 10, like named in a trust, how do you handle that?
So they cannot receive assets in their own name until they're 21. So you need to plan on the number of years between however old they are and when they turn 21. Generally speaking, that would be a trust that continues for their benefit. Now, you could and again, comes into really personal feelings and sharing personal information with your trustee. You can name the parent as, if little Johnny needs something, you can pay money to Johnny's mother and or father.
Yep.
If you don't think that Johnny's parents are either A, in the picture, or B, not responsible, then you make another contingent plan of, I can pay directly for their tuition. I can pay directly their medical bills so that it doesn't go through a parent or guardian.
Okay.
This just sets your mind at ease, really. Like, I mean, you can kind of get the vibe on what's happening, and you're like, oh man, I'm not going to be around after maybe 10 more years, and this is what I would like to see and how I want my money used, and this is how it's going to be used to the best advantage.
Could you give us some more examples of some family situations that, would just provide a sense to our audience of how a trust can be used? We've talked about a few, but I'm sure you have a wealth of other, scenarios and situations.
So I want to talk about one that is probably the least used, but
Okay.
my favorite is the pet trust.
Okay.
So you have a situation that in this current day and age, lots of people have pets. And those pets are either in lieu of children or the children are grown and they're out of the house.
Those
And
children, yeah.
now I have a four-legged pet
Right.
child. And so what happens to that animal? You want to make sure that they're provided for. So you set up a pet trust.
Okay.
And we were talking earlier that I had a friend that had a horse that she loved dearly, and she knew that she was not going to survive the horse. So she set up a trust, put money into it, and received the agreement of the individual that was boarding the horse at the barn where the horse lived, and she died, and the horse's board was paid on a monthly basis. His feet were trimmed and he was shod, and the vet came and he got all his shots and whatever. And, I'm not sure that her son was a fan of the fact that a chunk of money
I love
went.
that you brought that up. So what happens? Can he say, oh, no, I'm going to go take this back to court and fight this baby?
No,
No?
'cause she was fully competent when she created it.
Nice.
She did tell him about it, so he was aware. And as it turned out, the horse outlived the money because he was being extremely well taken care of. And the son actually ended up chipping in at the end and
nice.
continued to pay. So that's one.
Horses can live a really long time,
Can I?
like 35 years or so.
Yes.
You shouldn't buy one then.
You have another situation of you have a child, or you have multiple children or a single child, and they're not financially responsible. And say this individual likes to gamble. And so they are constantly in card games. They go to the casinos, and they're not on a winning streak most of the time. So you as a parent say, well, I've worked hard for my money, and I want to help my son, but I don't want my money to feed his bad habit of
Right.
gambling or whatever it may be. So you draft a trust for a specific child that says, I am aware of this problem, and you may pay. You become very restricted. You say, I will pay the rent so that there is always a roof over the head. I will pay a certain amount of money that can be put towards food so that there will always be food. and you restrict it. I mentioned you have 2 children or multiple children. One is responsible, one is not responsible. So you create a family trust,
Okay.
and you can divide it as to either one. You have children or you have no children, and you want to enjoy your money while you're alive, but when you die, you want your money to go to certain specific charities. So that's called a charitable remainder trust. The money is yours while you're alive. You can use it however you want. And then when you die, it pays out to certain charities.
Is that
That's
true
interesting.
for all trusts? Or like if you do like a revocable trust and you you have an account that's worth $100,000 and can that be part of the trust? And then if the answer to that is yes, can you still access that money once it is part of the trust?
Yes. So you can create a revocable trust for yourself. So when you put the money into it, it's yours to use as if it were in a checking account or a savings account.
Okay.
But what you're doing by creating the trust is that you are setting it aside that you technically are no longer the owner, okay? So it remains in the trust, but you have full access to it. And that way you can change it at any point in time, at any whim that you have.
Okay.
And you can write in whatever terms you want, whether it be to take care of children, to leave money to charity, take care of the dog or the horse.
So in those scenarios, let's say it was, a child now that there's money set aside in a trust for them after your passing per se, and it's for, housing and food. Would the mechanics of that would be that they would come to you and bring receipts and say, here's my rent, this is what I spent, and then they would receive money in return? Or would they get money on the onset and then go purchase those items?
I hate to say this, but it depends.
Okay.
Depends on the situation. So we have been known to pay rent directly. So we see and receive a copy of the lease, and we make that monthly payment so that you're assured that there's always a roof over the head. If you have someone that needs the money for clothing, depending on the situation, in most cases, we will ask for receipts. Show me that you've actually spent money on clothing. Or we can potentially buy a gift card for someone and give it to them that they can then use in a specific store. So there's things like that. There are also special needs trusts, which are wonderful arrangements that if you have someone in your life that has special needs and is receiving aid from the state, there are an arm's length of things that you can buy for that individual and not buy for that individual. Certain things will decrease the amount of benefits that they're receiving from the state. Certain things do not affect that. So, for example, if you were to gift from the trust, if the trustee of a special needs trust were to say, oh, it's your birthday, I'm going to give you $100, that goes against and will end up reducing the benefits that the state provides.
Okay.
But if you are, say someone is wheelchair bound and they don't get out very much, you can hire somebody to drive them, go pick them up, drive them, take them on a day trip, take them for a ride. It's a beautiful day. Let's go by the beach.
I like that.
So there are Special needs trusts are much more technical because you have to be aware of what benefits the state provides and what you don't want to do to decrease any benefits.
Okay.
Can retirement money go in a trust? Like, can I throw my 401k in a trust?
So technically, no.
Okay.
Because the 401k is tax advantaged. So you need to keep it in some sort of tax sheltered vehicle. So whether that be an IRA or a 401k. If you retire and you decide that you don't want to keep the money in the 401k and you want to take it out as a lump sum, first of all, you're going to pay taxes on the whole amount,
Right.
but then you could put the money into a
Okay.
trust.
Okay. Okay.
Carol, are there any other really interesting kind of family stories or situations you can tell us about? Because I think that's really instructive to those out there that are listening and trying to determine if this is something they want to do.
So we've touched on a few of family type situations. We've touched on the charitable remainder situations. Certainly we've touched on the pet situation.
Yeah.
Like,
And, and you can take a situation that you have parents and you have children and you have grandchildren. And you, as a parent, you've worked hard for your money and you've saved and you have your primary residence and then you have a vacation home. And then you have children and then you have grandchildren. And your idea is, oh, I love my house at the beach. The kids enjoy coming to the house at the beach. So I want to keep the house at the beach for as long as possible. So you create the trust. You take the house at the beach and you put that into the trust.
Okay.
Again, a situation that it's an asset of the trust, but it's not money. But then you also set aside money that says this money is to pay the real estate taxes on the house at the beach, to pay for the utilities at the house at the beach, so that your children are not burdened, and that's what it ends up becoming, that they become burdened with, oh my God, how am I going to pay? You know, I'm just barely making it with my own house. How I can now take on the responsibility of paying for an additional property. So you can set up that type of trust.
Okay.
You can set up a trust that is going to be a grandchildren's trust, that you're going to set money aside and you feel that your children don't need the money, they're working, they're self-sufficient, they make good decisions, but you want to make sure that your grandchildren have money for college.
Right.
So you can set up a grandchildren's trust
Okay.
and put that money in, let it grow. You know, your example, you've got 6 and 7, 8-year-olds. They've got 10 years before they go to college. So that money can then continue to grow. Doesn't make any distributions because in your trust document, you've said, I want it to be for college. A spin on that, you can say, I want it to be for education, in which case they can use it for private schools, private grammar schools, private middle schools, private high schools. And chances are, by the time they get to college, they're not going to have any money left.
Right.
But it is, you know, again, it's thinking what is most important to you, what's most important to the ones that you're naming in your trust as your
I
beneficiary.
mean, as you go through all this, you had mentioned earlier that you developed these really close relationships with your clients. I could see why, because the topics that you're talking about here are just very personal to families and
Exactly, and
whatnot.
very
So-
near and dear to the heart.
And I'm sure there's some difficult situations you run into where, someone wants a certain amount of money, but they're working now outside of the trust and they've done something they shouldn't, like the gentleman who quit his job.
Yes.
I mean, those are probably challenging conversations, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Looks like you can handle them.
You have lots of experience, so I'm sure you can.
It's, I think I had mentioned earlier, I had dealt with a multi-generational family, and it was a great group of people. Just truly enjoyed all of the members. And I had gone to a funeral, and they had the luncheon after the services. And so I went, and there were 4 grandchildren to the woman that had passed away. And they had disappeared for a while. And it was kind of noticeable, but it was like, okay, I was talking to other family members, and all of a sudden the 4 kids showed up, and at that time they were in their all of them were in their early 20s, and they had changed into casual clothing, and they came walking up to me, and they had big grins on their face. I was sort of, what have you guys been up to? And they had on T-shirts that just had the initials WWCD. And I was looking at them as, what are the shirts about? And they were like, well, think about it.
Yeah.
When's the last time I called you, and what did I call you for? I said, okay, well, you called because you were thinking of changing apartments, but it was going to cost you another $800 a month.
Right.
And, could you afford it? And, we talked about it, and I said, you really shouldn't be doing it. Yes, you could afford it, but maybe you want to think 3 times before you actually do this. And then one of the other ones said, and what was the last thing I asked you about? And, we went through with all 4 of them. And they said, so do you now get the T-shirts? I'm like, no, what are you talking about? And they just said, well, it means, what would Carol do?
Right.
Because we can't act without you.
Right.
Oh my God.
That's great.
That's great. And that really points to what kind of place Plymouth Investment Advisors is, because if that's the culture there, sign me up. Right?
That's great.
Yeah, it's, our tagline is, client service, the way it should be, the way that it used to be.
That's great.
And I think in every industry, things have changed. You go into a store and it's all self-checkout.
Yeah.
You go into like a Lowe's or something like that, and you can't find anybody who can answer a question.
For customer service, you get a bot. You can't talk to a human being anymore.
Check
It's
this
horrible.
box
I hate it.
to let us know you're not a robot.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible.
So I have a complicated question for you and an easy question.
Uh-oh.
I'll do the easy question first. How long before if you establish a trust, how long before it's active? Like, you hear about these wait times.
Immediately, as soon as you sign it.
Okay.
As soon as you sign it, hopefully you have an attorney, and you're not setting your own up. So as soon as you have gone over this with the attorney, it's what you say that you want. You sign on the bottom line. It's effective.
That's great.
I think I was probably thinking about the nursing home wait when they look back.
Yeah, I
at
think that's
nursing homes.
probably
So that's like a 5-year.
That's a 5-year look back in Massachusetts.
Okay,
So,
ready for the heavy duty question?
No.
People talk about probate. Every time you hear wills
probate.
and trusts, they say this word, probate. What is probate? What does it mean? And
It's a real pain.
and
Exactly.
does the trust help me out with
I've
that?
been through that. It is not fun.
Probate is extremely tedious. It involves the court, probate court. Therefore, it involves, no one take this in the wrong way, but it involves lawyers, because the court is legal and everything has to be done on certain forms within certain time frames. So you have legal fees, you have court fees, you have, in a lot of situations, you're going to have accountant's fees to prepare some of the documents. Because it's being filed, your information is being filed in the court, you lose your privacy. anyone could go to the court if they were so inclined and look up any documents that were filed on your behalf.
You know, that's really scary too, with like all the scams that are going on these days. Oh my gosh. So we can avoid all that pretty easily.
If you create a trust, you avoid probate.
And I think it has to be put in the newspaper for a period of time, right? Before
probate,
for the
yes.
probate,
Yes.
before the court decides.
Correct. There are
In
certain
case a relative comes out of the blue that you didn't
very
know about.
strict
Yeah, it's very
time
interesting.
frames of you need to file.
Right. Now I have it's somewhat similar question, but what happens, and if you've seen the scenario where a trust contradicts a will, they're not aligned. That must be a real interesting situation.
Has that happened?
Thankfully, not in my experience, because generally speaking, when you go to an attorney,
Right. It would have to be two different attorneys, I guess.
exactly, you'd have to have two separate attorneys,
Right.
and they'd have to be done at different times.
Right. So
Most
no one should do that.
Right, exactly. Always have your estate planning documents
All right.
done by one attorney.
So when you're saying
Change them at any time, but
estate plan documents, like, I'm paying my lawyer a certain amount of money per hour. So I'm like, do this, do this, do this. Like, what are those documents before I walk into your office that I should kind of have? Because it's not just the trust document.
right. So if you are creating your estate plan, what you're going to want to do is, in most attorneys have a pre-appointed, that's not the word that I want, but I don't want to use prepackaged because that indicates that it's off the shelf.
Yeah.
But if you go into an attorney and say, I want an estate plan, they automatically will create certain documents for you.
Okay.
And those are going to be a durable power of attorney,
Okay.
meaning that during your lifetime, someone has the authority to act on your behalf. They will have a living will.
Okay.
They will create a regular will. They will create a healthcare proxy. They will potentially create a trust if that's something.
The trust is one part of this
Correct.
bigger umbrella of what you need to
Correct.
do for estate
A
planning.
trust would be probably one of about 6 different documents that they would create.
Yes.
When someone's married, and I know we have to close up pretty soon, but if, say my husband and I aren't on the same page and I want to do a trust and he's like, can,
New husband.
no, I like John.
Just thinking of a solution right there. No, John's a good guy. We don't want to get rid of John.
All right. But can I do it by myself even though I'm married?
Yes.
Nice. I like that answer.
And don't let him watch this since I'd said that because
We actually do have a trust.
It's similar to the situation that you want to protect the assets from nursing home situations, creditors,
Okay. Okay.
divorce.
That's good to know. So what happens if someone gets divorced and they kind of forget about this trust? It's been sitting in their safety deposit box. Like,
I bet that happens.
do people like, oh, I didn't mean to leave it to wife number one. I wanted to leave it to wife number two.
Well, in most cases, the trust document is going to specify my spouse and my spouse Charlie, my spouse
Okay.
Harry. And if you have since moved on and you're on, spouse number 5 and spouse number 1 was
we have a
boy.
spouse in the United States and one in Portugal.
the document.
I only have one. Let's be clear there.
That clause becomes invalid.
Pretty important.
Yeah, it becomes invalid. But you bring up a really good point because a trust is not something that you should create and then stick in a drawer and never think about.
Right.
You really should, every couple of years anyway, take it out, dust it off,
Yeah.
review
that's
it,
what I do.
and make sure that the circumstances are still
Because they change.
exactly.
I think I meet with my attorney every 3-4 years, and maybe it's 5, I don't recall, but we go over it because things do change.
Things change in your personal life
Right.
of your beneficiaries and what you want for them, but they also change for taxability.
Right.
And you want to make sure that you have the most current taxes addressed.
So as we near our close, can you kind of summarize exactly what Plymouth Investment Advisors does?
Okay. So Plymouth Investment Advisors is a trust company that is owned by Bay Coast Bank.
Okay.
And we are operate offices in Plymouth, Swansea, and Stonington, Connecticut.
Okay.
Because we are a trust company, we can be named as a corporate trustee. The way that we operate is that any client coming to us, whether it be for a trust or say somebody just decides, I really don't need a trust, but they want somebody to manage their money. So any client that comes to us is assigned a team of officers to work with them. So there is an administrative officer, such as myself, and there is an investment officer. And we work together on every single account that we have. And we sort of take different roles. So if it's a trust role, the administrative officer sort of takes the lead on that most of the time because we're involved in the day-to-day activity of the client. If it's strictly an investment account, then the investment officer takes the primary role in that, and then the administrative officer coordinates the money that goes in and out, and but the investment officer is making the decisions of what assets, what securities to buy, and what securities to sell.
So you have people who invest without a trust, just invest with your organization, and others who have a trust with their investments perhaps in it.
Correct. And so as a combined team, we help the clients hopefully sleep well at night because they're entrusting their family, their assets to us to manage the way that they have told us they want it to be managed.
And how do people reach you if they're interested in using your organization for their financial needs, a trust, whatever it may be? How do they reach you?
So they can call me directly. Again, Carol Simmons. My phone number is 508-591-6218. My email address is csimmons@pliadv.com. And I guess that's something that I should mention because Plymouth is not spelled the way that you would normally think it would be spelled.
Okay.
So Plymouth, as in Plymouth Investment Advisors, is Plimoth. And we're located in Plymouth, Mass, which is Plymouth. And I can't tell you how many times I've been on a roll typing or preparing something and I'll spell them wrong.
Was that the old spelling of Plymouth way back when? Is that why?
When you do like
Old
Plymouth
Indian.
Plantation, that's how it's
Interesting.
If you go up to Plymouth, that's the way.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I should also mention that the assets managed within Plymouth Investment Advisors are not insured, and there is risk involved because we are talking about the stock and bond market, and that there are no government guarantees.
But that's like if you were investing with TD Ameritrade or a number of other companies, it's all the same.
Correct.
It's not different. Okay. Very good. Well, I can't believe this time went by so quickly. Thank you.
That makes two of us.
It was really, really interesting. It's hard to believe that an hour has gone by already.
Well, I hope
Covered a lot of ground.
I hope that you and your viewers have picked up a couple of ideas or a couple of thoughts that at some point in time they may say, hey, I remember, and that might be the situation that we're in and may need to create.
I think that those who've watched this will get a lot from this, and we'll post the contact information also. So if you didn't catch the email or the phone number, don't worry about it. We'll get it out there. it'll be posted. So thank you so much. It was really wonderful. And I want
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're very
It's been fun.
welcome. It's been great. And I want to thank our viewers for listening to our show. And if you'd like to become a sponsor, please contact us at 774-319-4230. Special thanks to Ron Gamache for our intro music and BioSkills of the Northeast for producing our show. Bay Coast Bank is just right for all of your financial needs. Visit baycoast.bank or call 508-678-7641 to learn more. Duncan Hearing Healthcare you can trust with sites in Fall River, Dartmouth, Falmouth, and Centerville. For more information, visit their website, duncanhearing.com. Thanks again, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.